Make an impression and boost your brand at staplesbusinessadvantage.com. Now you can manage your custom print and marketing materials all in one place with our easy online experience. Design, save, share, and print business cards, flyers, brochures, and more, all backed by our print guarantee and delivered free to all your locations, no minimum required. Sign up today and save 20%. Terms and conditions apply. See staplesbusinessadvantage.com for details.
Kohler Smart Toilets introduce a new standard of design and cleanliness, sculptural forms, intuitive technology, and total personalization with integrated warm water cleansing, heated seats, and warm air dryers. For peace of mind and convenience, there are touchless lids, seats, flush, and a self-sanitizing bidet wand. Now you can even use voice commands with Numi 2.0, featuring built-in Amazon Alexa. Explore the complete lineup at kohler.com/smarttoilets and discover what you've been missing.
Start clean with Clorox, because Clorox delivers a powerful clean every time. Because messes happen. Because...
Hey, honey, you know your dad's world-famous chili. Yeah, the one that takes 24 hours to make. So I was trying to help out and bring the pot to the table, but it was like super hot. And then I dropped it, and now the floor looks all, stained with chili. Look, the point is, you guys cool with pizza for dinner? Honey?
Ooh, yeah, that happens. So start clean with Clorox. Use Clorox products as directed.
Introducing the second best buffalo thing, Cheetos Crunchy Buffalo. Nothing beats buffalo wings on game day, but with a tangy and cheesy buffalo flavor, Cheetos Crunchy Buffalo is proud to be the second best buffalo thing. Grab Cheetos Crunchy Buffalo today.
The reviews are in for McDonald's hotter, juicier burgers. Let's hear what Hamburglar has to say.
Robble, robble.
What our old friend Hamburglar said is, the patties are juicier. The bun is a thing of beauty. The cheese perfectly melted.
Robble.
My burger dreams have come true. You heard him, folks. These are McDonald's best burgers ever. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Robble. Available at most restaurants in this area. Comparison of McDonald's classic burgers to prior burgers.
How's it going? And welcome to episode 29 of On the Wire, a proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. Follow the pod on the Twitter at OnTheWirePod. And of course, if you're listening on a platform that allows ratings and reviews, please take a second to let us know what you think. I am Adam Howe. You can follow me on the Twitter at 80grade. That's all spelled out. And I am once again joined by the 2020 TGFBI champion, Kevin Hastings. Follow Kevin on the Twitter at Hastings. Kevin, I'm going to milk this introduction every week for the rest of the season. I know there's only about 6 or 7 weeks left, but you got to tell me, how are you doing defending your crown?
I'm ahead of about 50 people. So I'm going to leave out the part that there's 435 participants this season.
I'll edit that part out. Yeah, we don't need to mention that. Ouch. Yeah, I think I've moved up in my league. I was spending most of the season in around 9th place, and I'm up to 3rd. So I feel good about that.
Very nice.
I think I don't have it in front of me. I think I'm at like 110, 120 overall. So not as good as my finished last year as well. It's around 50 or 52. But still got to feel pretty good about that.
Oh, absolutely. Numbers. 3rd with 6 weeks to go is not a bad spot.
Yeah. I got no chance. Our leader is probably 20 points above the 2nd place team. So good for him.
I've seen a lot of the leagues are that way. I saw somebody was posting one earlier today. The leader had 140 points.
Rob's not that high, but he's over the 100 mark for sure though. Wow. I don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We'll find out. Let's see if our guest has anything to say about that. We have a very special guest with us this week. We are joined by Jenny Butler. Jenny has been a longtime participant in various NFBC leagues, including TGFBI, dating back to 2014. So I'm really looking forward to picking, Jenny, your brain about how the platform itself has changed in the past 5 years or so, and what decisions you've made to help yourself manage your overall load, especially when it comes to FAAB leagues. But for now, it's just a pleasure to have you here with us. So how's the season treating you?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing good. The season's been a mixed bag, I would say, so far. I just heard your conversations about TGFBI. I actually have a team this year, even though we discussed before coming on that I don't really write. Rob DiPietro, who is my tag team partner, had an extra entry this year. He won one in Justin Mason's Potapalooza. So he was allowed to give it to somebody, and he gave it to me.
Wow.
And it's working out well so far. I'm currently sitting in 20th overall. So
there we go.
I'm hoping for the best. I'm fighting. I think I'm currently second in my league. It's really close. You were talking about some people having huge leads. Ours is, I think, a 2-point lead, maybe. It's going back and forth every day. Along with one of my main event teams is doing really well, and the other one is not. I have one in first and one in 10th. So that I'm just concentrating on that first place.
I was wondering which one it is that you're putting more effort into.
I'm still doing the work. I'm still doing the FAAB and stuff because I really want to finish as good as I possibly can in both leagues, just because that's on your permanent record. But the team that's in first it's changes hour by hour between me and another guy who's in first and who's in second. And I'm also just looking up at the overall money. I'm in like around 30th, I think, overall, and 22 get paid. So cashing in the overall would be a huge win. Yeah. So I'm crossing my fingers, and every decision is agonizing, and it's going to go right up to the end.
I'm in the side pot for the Razzball Cutline Championship, whatever. And at one point I was second in the side pot, and I felt really good about that when the playoffs started. And then I look back and I'm like, I'm 4 out of being paid. And I'm just like, I just would like to get my money back. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
But yes, of course, obviously we all do this because it's a ton of fun. It doesn't hurt to at least get your money back, or at least put some money back forth for next year, so you're not having to worry about.
It also really helps me to buy gifts for my wife when it becomes draft season, and I have another draft, honey.
See, I just tell my boyfriend
it's an investment.
I just tell my boyfriend that we're going to Vegas so I can draft, and he's all in. So
yeah,
there you go.
That wouldn't work with my wife as well as you maybe would think. But all right, that's amazing. Jenny, I'm really excited to have you here talking about obviously our FAAB options for this week. We don't have that many weeks left. Most of us don't have that much money left. I say that, and then I realize I went through FAAB last week without really checking in the last couple weeks how much FAAB I had left. And I realized I hadn't spent like anything all season in 2 out of my 3 leagues. And so I just started spending last week. I'm getting everybody I want. I got Chris Sale on the cheap somewhere, beat Yancey Eaton by $1, which felt really good. He only had $31 left, so I bid $32 on him, and lo and behold, nobody else bid anything on him. But I bid like way too much on some other guys that probably had a backup bid of like $4, and I bid over $100. I'm like, I can't take it with me. And so I got to at least guarantee that I'm going to get the guy I want. So if you're in that situation, keep that in mind. Like you don't get that money back. It's not like NFBC or any other platforms sends you a check because you didn't spend all your FAAB. You spend it, especially if you haven't been spending it all season.
I had a situation similar to that when I just in this main event league that's doing really well, Eloy did not get drafted. So he was not available until after he played. And I made sure going into that week that I had the most money. I was real close to the most for the few weeks leading up to it, and I didn't spend anything, just trying to make sure I had the most. And then I had the most, and I bid a lot. I bid 360 maybe, something like that. And I could have saved myself $150.
Well,
but I got him, and I needed him, and he's been great. So I'm not going to complain too much. But having another $150 right now would be very nice.
That's not bad either, that it was only 150 that you could have saved. It doesn't hurt as much as if it was somebody got him, the runner up was $60 or $70. At least somebody was going in the hundreds. Makes it much harder to narrow it down. So that's not bad at all in my mind. Yeah,
it's the power of the keep your honest bids, right? It's even if you don't think you're going to get a guy, go ahead, throw a bid in there and throw a bid that is appropriate to your budget and you know what you can afford. You don't get them, you save all that money. What to do? But at least you made the other team work for it. All right, so let's get right into our news section. Of course, we'll alternate between you two, get your input on some news and notes that we've seen throughout the course of the week and see how that might affect your FAAB bids. Kevin, I'm going to start with you. There are a bunch of hitters throughout the league that have recently or just about to be assigned to their rehab assignments. So I'm going to give you a couple players, and I just ultimately want to get your take on what you expect to see from them and whether or not you're interested in stashing them this weekend, assuming that they make it through without any hiccups on their rehabs, and you get to put them in your lineups either for the second half of next week or the beginning of the week after. So Byron Buxton in Minnesota, your boy Alberto Mondesi in Kansas City, Nick Senzel, who went through a whole mix-up of whether or not he was on a rehab assignment or he was being demoted in Cincinnati, Daniel Vogelbach in Milwaukee, and Akil Baddoo in Detroit. So again, what expectations do you have for these guys? And of them, who are you the most interested in depending on their availability?
Well, Buxton is universally rostered in TGFBI and nearly universal in Yahoo. And he may even be 90% at this point in the season in Yahoo is pretty close to universally rostered probably. Mondesi is available in a couple of TGFBI leagues. I would definitely add Mondesi. If he does indeed return to the major league club, they've shown in the past when he's come back from injury, they do turn him loose on the base paths. So that's a definite add if he is available in your league. He is available a little more on some Yahoo leagues as well. Nick Senzel, I'm really not interested. I just haven't seen much from him. He's getting on base at the minor league level, it appears. Not hitting home runs, not stealing bases. It's only been a few games, but it's just, this has been going on for 3 or 4 years now. We haven't seen much from him. Vogelbach, the thing that worries me about Vogelbach is it going to hurt Rowdy Tellez's playing time. He already gets a day off every 4th or 5th day recently, but when in the lineup, Tellez has been amazing. So no interest in Vogelbach, but it does worry me that Tellez may miss a day or two each week. Both of them being lefties, it's just, I don't know how that's going to affect that. Baddoo is available in a handful of TGFBI leagues and only 35% rostered in Yahoo. Now, we've talked about this a lot this season, 3 outfield leagues, shallower leagues with as far as number of teams go as well. But he hadn't been hitting for as much power, but he was getting on base and stealing bases for the last few weeks before the injury. So that is probably for the shallower leagues that he's available in, the best available, and even in the handful of TGFBI leagues as well, a few 15-teamers out there. So from this list, sum it up real quick. In the very few leagues he's available, Mondesi for sure, and then Baddoo in the others where he's available.
Yeah, I would. The only thing I really have to add is about Nick Senzel, and it's really just to agree with what you said. Being a Reds fan, I've followed Nick Senzel's journey, and the Dynasty League that you and I are in together, I traded him away last year for Julio Urias, which is feeling nice right about now.
Oh, that's amazing.
So he can't stay on the field. They don't know what they're going to do with him. The fact that they are just moving him around the diamond all the time just makes me think that they don't quite know what they think of him. So it's just all very suspicious, and I feel like I need to see an extended run from him before I'm going to buy in.
Yeah, I mean, especially my biggest questions came at the very beginning of the season when they obviously had a big hole at shortstop, and he wasn't even under consideration to move back to his original position that he came up with. That and Jonathan India as well. So it was interesting in those situations where the Reds stood on those guys at the position, Senzel specifically. And everything that Senzel's been through it seems like he's been through everything between his vertigo and then obviously his on-field injuries. And it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like a lot of them have to do with one another. They're unrelated, which is like very Byron Buxton of him, but it's concerning nonetheless. All right, Jenny, I'm gonna ask you the same question about a few pitchers that we saw either recently or in the middle of their rehab assignments. Jordan Yamamoto with the Mets, Matthew Boyd with the Tigers, Zach Eflin in Philadelphia, and Jose Urquidy in Houston, either recently or are in the middle of their rehab assignments. And so curious to know what your expectations are for these pitchers and whether or not you're considering stashing any of them this weekend with hopes that they bring it around come, the end of this month or even into September.
Yeah, Jordan Yamamoto is probably the one I'm least interested in. And he did pretty well with the Marlins, but anytime somebody's moving from the Marlins to the Mets as a pitcher, I'm not feeling super good about that. I don't really trust their pitching staff and their training staff very much. Also, I don't know that he's going to have a starting spot when he returns. They've got McGill. They just got Carlos Carrasco back. They've got Rich Hill. Obviously, Rich Hill is a ticking time bomb. Who knows? But right now, it doesn't look like there's a spot for him. Maybe he's a long reliever, but I don't think he needs to be picked up yet. You could always wait and see what happens when he comes back. And if he looks good and he's getting some relief innings and maybe a win here or there, then maybe at that point. Matthew Boyd, I don't know what to make of him. He's coming back. He had such a great season in 2019 with all those strikeouts. And then last year, not so much. This year, not so much. But he will have a spot when he comes back. And they're trying to rest some of the Mannings and the Skubals and the Mises. So they'll probably let him go. But I think he's worth a speculative ad, but I would be real careful just throwing him right in your lineup if you get him. If you can pick him up and stash him, I think that would be the ideal situation. Let's see. Zach Eflin, I'm actually more optimistic about him. He had a knee injury. He just had patella tendonitis, and that's something that can be cleared up with just rest, and that's what they gave him. And so I don't really have too many concerns that when he comes back, it wasn't an arm injury. He's another one that it's hard. You would think that he would get his job back right away. He was a pretty solid piece of the rotation before he got hurt. So Ranger Suarez had a little bit of a shaky start the last time, and he's stayed a little bit short on innings. So it's possible that he could replace Ranger Suarez or maybe even Matt Moore. Jose Urquidy is the one that I am most excited about. I've held on to him throughout his injury. So his initial MRI when he got injured was clean. So I'm hoping that's a good sign that all that he needed was some rest. He's pitching really well this season. And similar to Matthew Boyd, they have some guys that they're looking like they want to give them some rest. They put Javier in the bullpen, and then they are bringing people back and forth. So having some innings from him at this point might be really good. He's out there in a few main events, but if he's there, I would pick him up. So for me, the priority amongst those four would be Urquidy, Eflin, Boyd, and then Yamamoto would be last.
Yeah, and that is about the order in which their availability is across main event leagues. Like you mentioned, Urquidy, 94% rostered across main event. So not quite going to be available, probably not on your list, but you should always be checking. He's going to be a little bit more available in lower team leagues, like the online championship and other 12-team leagues, with Eflin being at 86% roster across main event. Matthew Boyd available in over half of main event leagues, rostered in only 40%, and then Yamamoto at 0% across main event. So widely available. Feel free. Spend wisely on that option. All right, Kevin. Freddy Peralta left Wednesday's game early after reportedly feeling discomfort in his shoulder, of course, after taking some swings, and has since been placed on the 10-day IL. Peralta himself doesn't expect to miss more than one start, but in the meantime, who are you expecting to fill in his spot in the rotation? And do you think this could also be an opportunity for the Brewers to start resting their rotation as they currently sit with a pretty comfortable lead in the NL Central?
Yeah, they've already started to do that even when Peralta was in there. It appears this next week that they have 6 guys ready to go, including your Aaron Ashby, who you brought up last week and had a nice 4 innings. One more inning would have been even better, but looks like he's going to go on Wednesday after Burns. They got Woodruff, Brett Anderson's back, Eric Lauer, and Adrian Hauser. It's nobody in the rotation for me. It just re-emphasizes a guy we've talked about several times this season, and that's Brent Suter. I like him because they are limiting these guys' innings and spreading them out, and they like to put him in a position to, when they're tied or down a run, and he's been put in a position for 3 seasons now where he accumulates wins. That's the guy I'm starting from the Brewers.
Yeah, and a lot of people say that it's difficult to predict when you're going to see these kind of relievers play. And I don't think it's as difficult as a lot of people are afraid that it is. You looking at the way they use Suter, they use him a lot. They don't need to necessarily wait 4 or 5 days until they get him back in there, even if he did pitch 2 innings, because he's been so good and so efficient. He's not throwing that many pitches in those outings as well. Definitely, Suter's a good call out there. I think I heard this, Jordan White said this on his podcast In the Deep, that I think he's like 3rd or 4th in wins in the National League or something like that.
Last week he was tied for 2nd when we brought him up. He had gotten his 12th win. The other thing is they're not afraid to throw him right back out there if he gives up a run or 2.
Absolutely. Like him and Colin McHugh, these guys are just gold in that situation that their teams put them in and day out.
I'll also jump in on the love for Aaron Ashby. Sorry. I'm in on him. I'm definitely going to see if I can find some places where he's available this week. Yeah.
Hopefully it's not too late. He's definitely I've jumped on the Ashby train for sure, especially if they just let he ride him out for the rest of the season, which I can totally see them doing. To your point, Kevin, just the way that the Brewers has been saying it since spring training, that they're going to be limiting their pitchers to 100 innings or so more than what they saw last year, and we're hitting that mark.
Yeah, Burns, I think Burns, I looked earlier, is at 129. So another 30 innings before he would hit that point. Obviously, into the postseason, he'll exceed that. And I'm sure they're adjusting their plan and saying, yeah, we're going to let these guys go in the postseason. But Woodruff's already at 147 innings. And we saw him, they pulled him after 3 innings last week, I believe. He'd thrown 74 pitches, but they're going to keep doing this.
Yeah, I could see some piggybacks coming as well, utilizing Ashby or even Suter in those situations, rather than just going 6-man for the rest of the season. Some piggybacks would be obviously nice for whoever that second starter is coming in. All right, Jenny, another pitching situation. Patrick Sandoval has been placed on the 10-day IL with a left lumbar spine stress reaction, which is just lovely to say. And Joe Madden has said that it's possible that Sandoval's season is over. Jose Quintana started in Sandoval's place on Thursday, though that didn't last very long, and he was knocked out after just an inning and a third, allowing 6 runs, 5 earned, off 7 hits. So my question to you is, do the Angels have any other options to fill in the rotation spot next time around, or do you think Quintana gets another shot?
This one's just a big bummer. I'm so bummed to see Patrick Sandoval go out. He's been so great this year, and the small silver lining for us as fantasy players is maybe to keep the price down on him a little bit for next year. He essentially has a slight break in his back, so like he's not coming back this year. No. I can't imagine. The stress reaction is just a very mild break, so he's not coming back. But right now they were running a 6-man rotation, so they still do have 5 starters in the rotation. And Jaime Barria and Jose Suarez, Reed Detmers, and we get Dylan Bundy still coming into our lives. But I think Quintana could fit in there as a 6th man, or they could stick with those 5. But either way, he's not good. So I don't really have any interest in picking him up. But it does seal, hopefully, a job for Reed Detmers or Jose Suarez. If you're rostering those guys, I think that their jobs are a little bit safer.
And then with the news that Alex Cobb is not coming back for a while, at least according to Madden as well, that should cement that list of pitchers you mentioned in that rotation. All right, away from the Angels, and we'll stay in the division, Kevin, with Chris Bassitt in Oakland, and I will spare everybody the scary details of what happened, but ultimately he is on the 10-day IL, resting after a successful surgery to repair his fractured cheekbone and upper jaw. And it was just, like I said, I'm going to spare everybody the details about all that. He is expected to be out for more than just a few weeks, and looks like Paul Blackburn has taken his spot in the rotation for the A's. Do you expect to see Blackburn in there every 5th day, or is there anyone else you expect the A's to plug in that you're keeping an eye on?
I think in the immediate future, he's who they're going to roll with, Blackburn. But I don't know if this lasts, but I also don't know who their options are. I'm sure a lot of athletics fans are thinking, let's stretch out AJ Puck, but that hasn't been successful in the past. His last 4 outings He's been great throwing one inning. He's going to be useful for them in that role. I don't think they're going to try to mess with that. So I think they will roll with Blackburn as long as they can, but I'm not interested fantasy-wise. It's that even in the minor leagues this year, he had a whip over 1.5, and that's been that way so far in his major league appearances. And there has been a silver lining with some strikeouts, but he just lets too many guys get on base, and that could be a disaster.
I think a lot of A's fans were clamoring for Dalton Jeffries to come back up as well. He did pitch. So again, we record these on Saturday nights. So I would say yesterday, Friday, he pitched Friday in AAA. Did not do that well there. Let up 7 runs, 6 earned through 6 innings. Just 1 home run though, and only 1 walk. But before that, he's been pitching really well. He's been stretched out ever since, pretty much all season. And obviously he had his little stint earlier in the season. I think that was who I expected to come, who would come up and fill that spot. Blackburn's in there. That's the guy you got to be looking at for bids, and it doesn't look like there's an opening for Jeffries at the moment.
Yeah, when I was in Las Vegas for the main event drafts this year, there were a lot of people whose opinions I really respect that were drafting him when it was suspected that he might be the 5th starter. And it's just one of those things that I file away in my head for later in the season when you see the good guys picking some of these guys. Yeah, I'm going to keep an eye. If Jeffrey seems like he might get in there, I might try to jump on that.
All right, Jenny, we'll go back to hitters for this one. George Springer, of course, hit the IL earlier this week with a grade 1 knee sprain. It's expected to be at least through the rest of this month as he rehabs through that. We've had a whole week to see how this might affect the Jays lineup. And honestly, we've had pretty much most of the season to see what a George Springer-less lineup looks like for the Blue Jays. But right now, what's caught your eye as far as playing time and lineup changes in Toronto?
So I looked back at what they've done with their lineup since he got injured, and since he got hurt, Corey Dickerson started twice against 2 righties, and Lourdes Gurriel started twice, once against a righty and once against a lefty. So I'm not super clear on whether I think either of those guys is going to get a full-time job from it. But I think if you're in a deep enough league, either one of them could be interesting. That's a point that we're at in this season. If you're in a deep enough league, anybody that's getting playing time and is doing anything with it can be valuable. I think that they both have a little bit of a power speed component, and if you're in that position and you need an outfielder, a part-time player in a lineup that good might just be worth your while. Although it sounds, and I know that Springer has not had a great success with coming back on time, but it sounds like they're saying he's really only going to miss about 2 weeks. So I wouldn't maybe go too crazy for either one of those guys, either Dickerson or Gurriel.
Honestly, that is just music to my ears, Jenny. Thank you very much for updating me on that, because I have Springer in too many places that I would like to see him back in my lineup. All right, Kevin, pretty much just going to wash, rinse, and repeat that same question to you. But regarding Jesse Winker in Cincinnati, who's been out since the beginning of the week with an intercostal strain, something he's dealt with in the past. So I think we talked about the Cincinnati outfield last week, but now that we have a little bit more clarity on what they might do throughout the course of the week with him being out, what have you seen and what is of interest to you?
First of all, I have the opposite of the optimism that Jenny has with Springer coming back. With Winker, Thursday, David Bell said he expects it will be more than the minimum. And that was a full week before he's eligible to come back. A full week before he's eligible to come back, already admitting he's not coming back then. So that leads me to believe it's going to be quite some time past the minimum if they're already admitting that. So it looks to me like what we've seen the past few games which is awesome for my draft champions teams, is Aristides Aquino has been in there most nights. And yeah, he's hitting around 200, but he is hitting a home run every few days. And so in deep leagues and you need some power, that's the guy I grab. He's available in a lot of places out there.
All right, Jenny, in Texas, Joe Barlow appeared to move into the closer position for the Rangers, but has since been placed in the IL with the blister issue, which is just too bad because this young guy has been doing some really special things there in Texas. Are you speculating on a Texas closer options this week, or is Texas just not a team that you're interested in?
The guy that we all thought it was right after the trade deadline was Spencer Patton. So we might be back in that world again, but I'm not super excited about that option. Greg Jewett's closer chart, which if you're not using it, you should absolutely be doing. It's just awesome. His Substack, his blog, and his closer chart are just invaluable. But he lists Patton, Brett Martin, and Dennis Santana as all sharing the job. So I'm not really, unless I'm really desperate for saves and you're just looking for anything you can get, I'm not really interested in picking up anyone in this bullpen, because how many more saves are the Rangers going to get anyway? And if you're starting to mix it up amongst 2 or 3 guys, you're looking at maybe a save or 2 for each one of them, and you might have an easier time getting 2 saves from like a Chad Green. So I think that it's probably safe to stay away unless you're just really that desperate.
Yeah, I did a lot of speculating in one of my other daily moves leagues around the trade deadline, just basically pulling anybody I could off the wire as moves were being made. So I have a lot of, at least in that league, Dylan Floro, David Bednar. I did have Joe Barlow for a minute, and Rowan Wick. And to your point, and then I start realizing like a week or 2 later, I'm like, why? What am I doing with all these guys? Bednar hasn't gotten a save yet. Rowan Wick obviously hasn't been put into that situation that a lot of people thought he might with the Cubs. And Floro is still with Miami. Who's to say how many? Now, that's not to say that bad teams don't get saves. But to your point, you might be better off looking at a fill-in guy like a Chad Green when the number 1 guy is out on a really good team rather than wasting a roster spot. All right, Kevin, Chris Archer is making his 2021 debut on Sunday, starting for the Rays after finishing his rehab from recovering from a thoracic outlet surgery. I'm sure I didn't say that, which kept him out all of the 2020 season as well. What are you expecting out of Archer, if anything, the rest of the way? And is he worth a flyer regardless of how he performs on Sunday?
I'm really interested to see what he looks like tomorrow. I didn't look at any video from the start he made at AAA here just last week. 3 or 4 days ago, he went 4 2/3, and he did give up 3 earned runs, but had 6 strikeouts. I have been a fan of Chris Archer even post Pittsburgh Pirates. After, all we hear about is Austin Meadows and Shane Baz and Sixto Sanchez. That's what we hear for Chris Archer. And I just threw the wrong players in there other than Austin Meadows, I believe. But anyway, the huge package that Tampa got for him, it's crazy to see when you look back his ups and downs since then. It is 100% in line with when he was healthy and when he wasn't. He's been good even since that trade when he was healthy. So if he is, I'm definitely interested. Tomorrow's start is really going to affect the price tomorrow night, obviously. And I'm hoping that he looks good but doesn't go deep, doesn't qualify for a win. Maybe a nice 3 innings would be perfect because I'd like to see him perform well, but I'd like to also keep that price down tomorrow night. I am not starting him this week. I'm not throwing a rusty guy out there at Camden Yards this time of year in his second start back. So, yes, I am interested, but I'm not planning on using him this week. But hopefully performs well, so I'm confident the following week.
Yeah, as Nick Pollock would say, it's an obvious still ill. First time back from being out for so long. And you had 2 out of 3 of those names correct, by the way.
I was like, what am I doing?
Sixto was from Philly.
Yeah, exactly.
But the best part of the Chris Archer deal is that Chris Archer came back. They got him back.
Right.
In that. All right, Jenny, we'll end with you on this one. Just came through earlier today. Kenta Maeda was pulled with right forearm tightness and should miss probably at least 1 start, if not longer. Here's hoping that it's not that case. With so many pitchers in Minnesota on the IL, is there anyone you're eyeing to join that rotation anytime soon to fill his spot?
No. Is easy.
Not the first time we've asked this question, and that's not the first time we've gotten that reaction.
This just happens. I didn't have time to do too much of a deep dive, but just scrolling down the roster, I don't even see who they have to put in there. And the two guys that I see on the 40-man that are in the minors, I don't really know who they are. The easiest choice, the first thing I thought was Randy Dobnak, but no, he's hurt. Michael Pineda's hurt. They're starting guys right now that I'm not all that familiar with. What's his name? Barnes, I think. So I don't honestly really see anyone. And if you guys have a suggestion, I would love to hear it.
I would like to see Joe Ryan make a push up. Like you mentioned, he's not on the 40-man, and obviously he's back from the Olympics by now and pitching again. And then Jordan Balazovic would be somebody that I think a lot of people would be keeping an eye on as well, but also not available. Joan Duran would be somebody as well in their minors who is on the 40-man, but has been hurt pretty much all season himself in the minors. So again, some of the bigger names in the minors not really available for one reason or another. So it would be something to keep an eye on. Whether or not they just continue to do bullpen games or not, that would be my guess right now until we get a little bit more clarity on how much time Maeda might be missing. And as a team that's not going to make the playoffs, this could just be an opportunity to just not push them any harder than they really have to, as he continues to be on the Minnesota roster past this year. Kevin, you don't have anybody in the back pocket that you're deciding to keep to yourself, are you?
No, not there. Like you said, we've went through this before when it was Pineda, and I agree with Jenny. I wish it was Dobnak, but he's injured too.
All right, that's going to wrap up our news section of the pod. As always, we do try to keep it focused to news that might affect your FAAB considerations this Sunday. But there are certainly lots of other baseball-related things to talk about. For more on that, make sure to check out the Keep or Cut podcast hosted by Pete Ball and Chad Young. Keep or Cut is a fantasy baseball podcast focused on keeper leagues, long-term leagues, and Otnu leagues. Pete and Chad have over 30 years of fantasy baseball experience between the two of them, and they try to share that knowledge and experience with their audience each week. From difficult rebuilds to players to stash to keeper deadline decisions and everything in between, they cover it all. Give them a listen wherever you normally listen to podcasts, and follow the show on the Twitter at Keep or Cut. That's Cut with a K. All right, Jenny, like I talked about at the top of the show, I'm really looking forward to picking your brain about your experience, your overall experience that you bring to the pod, that you've been playing in NFBC format for a long time, definitely longer than me. And I wanted to get your brain about, I get a lot of mixed reactions about the NFBC format or the platform itself. When I try to get, this year I tried to get a bunch of my home league members to jump in an OCQ with me. I got one, and once he lost Eloy, he pretty much checked out, is what he told me. But he had a hard time navigating the platform itself. And I've heard this from a lot of people, and I will say that, like, I've had my hiccups myself when I first jumped in. I did my first league 2 years ago, and it's a different format. It's a different platform than every other platform. And if you play on multiple platforms, you just know that there's going to be some hiccups when you try something new. As I start to play around with it more and more, it's like I start to fall, and I've said this on the podcast before, I'm like, fall in love with it more and more. But tell me about your first experience in the platform, and then what's changed about the NFBC platform over the last 5 years. And I know that plenty has changed in that time, but I wanted to hear it from your point of view and what keeps you coming back to that platform. And I'll get into more questions a little bit later, but why don't you let me know about that?
I actually really like the platform, and maybe it's just because I'm used to it. I think you always are partial to what you're the most familiar with. When you know where to go to look for everything, that really helps. I guess I haven't heard too many people having too much trouble with it. Even earlier this week, when I was preparing for this, I put a question out on Twitter saying, how do I find 12-team ownership rostership percentages? And somebody had to tell me, and it was right there in front of my face. But there's a lot of information there, and you can have to search sometimes. But for NFBC, I really enjoy specifically the FAAB part of the platform. I think that for me this year and the last couple of years, I've really only had leagues on Fantrax and NFBC, and I vastly prefer the NFBC platform for FAAB. I like the fact that you can have the players and your FAAB bids all together on one page, the FAAB bids being over on the right side, so you can easily sort of move them around. You can easily switch out the player that you want to drop. That's one of the things that drives me nuts about Fantrax, is that, as far as I know, there's no way to just switch the drop person. You have to delete the pick and then put it all back in again. It drives me crazy. But I think it's just part of what you're used to. I just think that it's really easy. It gives you a nice reminder if you forget to save, just things like that. Right on one page, you can sort around for your roster. You can look at last 14 and last 7 days if you want to. I just think it's really easy to use. And I would say to anyone that's struggling with it a little bit, it's just take time to get used to it and you'll probably be fine. For me, one of the things that I've learned in the last 5 years of joining these is just to really keep a cap on how many FAAB leagues I'm in. It just takes time. And I didn't appreciate at the beginning how much time you really should spend on FAAB. And I used to just think, just going in and picking people up. NFBC was the first FAAB format that I ever joined. So I just thought, I'm just going to put in some pickups and some drops, and I'll pick the best player over the best stats, the best overall stats on the free agent list. And over time, I've just started to learn that you need to really look at it on a more granular level, look at matchups for the following week and try to treat it more as 26 individual weeks. A lot of times, at least with the bottom few spots on your roster, just really churning those out and replacing them and really trying to maximize your at-bats every week if you possibly can. But for the format itself, I'm trying to think of changes that I've seen in it, and I can't really think of any, but I also have a terrible memory, so there's that. But yeah, I love NFBC. I like the format. I like the players in it. I like the guys that run it are just great. They're very straightforward. They're very on the up and up. They do a good job, and so I'm never worried that they're going to pull anything shady. I like the no trading personally. I think that it just makes it for a little bit fairer of a game when we're all anonymously playing online for a lot of money. So I just think it's just a fairer way to do it. But yeah, I enjoyed NFBC, and I'm coming back year after year.
Like you said, you've been playing NFBC for the last 5 years or so. And I'm curious to know, though, and we talked about at the beginning of the show, where you mentioned it, you don't really write and you don't really regularly analyze, at least publicly, maybe beyond your Twitter page or your Twitter feed. But as an avid player, what kind of information are you gathering, and how much of it are you utilizing versus what your own, experience and what your own gut is saying on, specifically when it comes to FAAB, but just all drafting and strategy and what have you?
Yeah, for the last few years, I got into the high stakes leagues, and I started to think, boy, I really need to be diving into this much more. I need to really be into player analysis. When you listen to podcasts and stuff, you listen to people do deep dives on players, and I just thought I should be doing that. And so I spent a couple of off seasons trying to physically do a deep dive on each individual player before the season started. I went through a couple years where I tried to do my own projections. It is not my thing. I need to accept my strengths and weaknesses, and I've learned that player breakdowns, player analysis are not my thing. So what I've decided to focus on this year is where to gather the best information from. I'll spend some time earlier in the week downloading the free agents, getting projections incorporated into that, and doing a lot of the setup. And then I just spend some time looking at lineups and looking at starting rotations and just see if any new names pop up. But for the most part, I look at, when I'm looking for new names, looking for those under the radar picks, I do rely on other people. I look at Matty Davis's articles, and I listen to his pod. I listen to your pod. The Athletic, Vlad Sedler's article every week is fantastic. So I just always do an extra scan of those resources to make sure that I'm not missing anyone, because I know that these guys can do the work that why repeat that kind of work when there's such good people doing it already and putting it out there for you to buy. So I've just decided to try to use my time and efforts in where it serves me best and try to take help where I really need it.
I'm just honored that you put our pod in with that list that you just gave. And as you mentioned before, with Jewett's article with the closers chart as well, there's really good information out there. And I'll definitely echo what you just said about why do the work that somebody is already doing, and they're doing it really well. And that's where I think a lot of people get held up on, is whether who do they trusting, who are they putting. You're going to either put the effort into doing your own research, which is fine, which is great, or you're going to put in the effort to find out who's putting in the good research. And sometimes those take just as long to like figure out who to trust and who you don't trust. So I will definitely echo every name that Jenny mentioned, including us, is our valuable resources, of course.
I should also throw in the Razzball weekly projections are great. I can download the free agents from NFBC, download the Razzball projections, and just do a lookup, and it would quickly sort by who's available and who has the best, projection going into the following week. It's just a really quick and easy way to, in the past, I've spent time trying to look at handedness and how many lefties and how many righties is this guy facing and how many games do I think he's going to play. But like I said, Razzball is doing all that work already, and it's all factored into their algorithm. So just use it. Yeah,
I'd also say that it's good to keep an eye out for updates that all the sites are doing. Sites make adjustments to different parts of their site all the time. Fangraphs added the roster resource section rather than having roster resource being its own website somewhat recently. And they changed their auction calculator as well recently. And if you're not going back and checking these things on a regular basis, you can almost miss out on those adjustments that they're making. And I know Nick does a really great job over at Pitcher List updating the site every year, with the last two updates probably being two of the biggest ones. And I'm expecting just as big things next February when he launches PL7. And so you should always be looking at those updates as they're going. And if you're going to a site that's not continuously updating, maybe that's something you start questioning whether or not how much time and effort they're putting into not only the update to their site, but also the research and the effort that they're putting into what they're putting out.
Yeah, I think on Pitcher List now, if you click on a pitcher's name, you can go back, and when you click on their game log, it shows Nick's SP Roundup synopsis for every guy, and you can just click through like the last 3 or 4 starts and see what he said, and it's just a really quick and easy way to see what this guy's been doing and what Nick thought of it, because he watches
you can
everything.
do that with the hitters as well. Every time they show up in the batter's box article, that little blurb shows up on their player page as well. So thanks for the shout out there. Kevin, I'll ask you the same thing. Like, you just started writing your FAAB article over at Pitcher List. Comes out every Sunday. It's a companion to this episode each week. But before that, what was like your process behind trying to make sure you got all the information that you needed to make those weekly or even daily adjustments in your leagues?
Like Jenny said, I would check out multiple places, and we've talked about this. I don't know if we've talked about it much on air. We've definitely talked about it off air, and I have consciously stopped looking at those resources so that I don't subconsciously get my ideas from them before I write my own article. And that has hurt. I used to read Vlad Sedler's article every single week. I haven't read it this season at all. And so that hurts. I don't want to subconsciously copy his stuff. So I haven't even looked at it. But that's definitely on all the resources Jenny mentioned earlier, I used to check out every week. I think now my biggest thing is I definitely follow as many beat writers for as many different teams as I can. And then I watch a lot of games. And that's probably the biggest thing for me is I look at all the information I can. But when I'm watching a game, I just see something that's interesting that's not going to show up in the box score. And, I'm going to go check this guy out. And like a guy we're going to talk about here in a little bit for the Houston Astros that I like coming up. I hadn't even noticed him until I saw him playing last night. That's a big thing for me, is watching games.
Yeah, I'll admit I don't watch nearly as many games as I used to, just life
right
for the most part, but it makes a big difference when I do. So that's huge. All right, well, I appreciate you guys spewing out some of the background noise of how you guys get to where you are on a weekly basis. And yeah, even this late in the season, I think it's really good information for people to take away and either utilize for the next 5 or 6 weeks, but also to put that in their back pocket and realize that maybe I need to be adjusting what I'm doing on a regular basis next year get into a new rhythm in order to be a little bit more successful, or just switch things up. So let's switch things up here now and get right into our recommendations, the heart of the episode. We are going to continue with our standard format and start with our hitters. And of course, these are guys that are going to be available hopefully in your leagues. It's always good to check if you're not sure. Sometimes we do talk about guys that might be available in more regularly in 10-team leagues or 12-team leagues, but you never know. Every once in a while, I'll look at a guy and realize his rostership is not 99% in main event or in TGFBI 15-teamers. I'm never in that one league that they're available, but they do exist. So you should always be checking, especially this time of year. Jenny, I'm going to start with you. In the power category, home runs, RBIs, who might you be looking at to add this weekend if you're looking for those categories to make a bump?
Yeah, so this week I think a good choice for power would be Bobby Dahlbeck. He's 47% rostered in NFBC Online Championships, and he's 81% rostered in TGFBI, so he's still there in a few leagues. His situation has gotten a little bit more precarious since the trade deadline because the Red Sox acquired Kyle Schwarber. So he might be in a first base DH rotation with Schwarber and JD Martinez, but he's really on a hot streak right now. In general, I don't love just chasing hot streaks, but I think at this time of year, I'm trying to churn my roster as much as possible. So if I pick him up and I use him for a week and I end up dropping him, then that's fine. In the last 14 days before today, I didn't include today's numbers, he's hitting .357 with 3 home runs, 10 runs, and 13 RBIs. And he's in a really good lineup, so I'm hoping that the Red Sox will utilize him while he's playing so well, and maybe when he cools off, he'll lose a little bit of at-bats, but this average is out of control for him. He's not normally like this, so his average might slow down, but he's always been a good bet for power. So if power is really what you're looking for, I think that Bobby Dahlbeck would be a good choice.
The good news here, at least from what I heard, is that when Schwarber does come into the field, which he would like to do soon, he hasn't yet, but he would probably end up going into the outfield first before he goes to first. So Dahlbeck might have a little bit of extra time continuing to take over first base on a regular basis. So it's a good call out there. Kevin, who you got for home runs and RBIs this weekend?
Yeah, this is who I was talking about a couple of minutes ago, Jake Myers of the Astros. We've talked a lot about all season long wanting part of the Astros lineup, and single-digit rostership percentages, both TGFBI and Yahoo. He was grabbed in 21% of main event leagues, and the interesting thing, he's had such a good week. He's started every team that rosters him has him in their lineup for this weekend because he's had a really good couple of weeks here filling in for Kyle Tucker. We've talked about this before too. The Astros have been really weird with these guys going on the IL for reasons related to COVID. We don't know if they're testing positive, and we have no idea. But at this point, I'm assuming he's going to be out at least the minimum of 10 days, which gets us through Wednesday. So in NFBC formats, the Astros play their 3 games the first half of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I think this is a nice add for some power, at least the first half of the week. Keep an eye on Kyle Tucker. Also, if he keeps this up, he may stay in there for a little while, at least in spurts. 10 for 30, 3 home runs, 7 RBIs, 6 runs, and a stolen base. AAA this season, he was hitting .342 with 16 home runs and 10 stolen bases in 68 games. So he's got some speed as well. And I just got to throw out there, he is a Nebraska Cornhusker, and maybe he'll go on to be the best one since Alex Gordon.
Yeah, and then with Chas McCormick being pulled from Saturday's game as well with left hand soreness, who's to say that there won't be another opportunity in the outfield, even if Tucker does return a little bit early. So no word on if Chas will miss any extra time in the outfield in Houston, but keep an eye on that as well. All right, we're going to move on to our speed category. Kevin, I'm going to stay with you. Stolen bases, runs, who's a speedster that you're looking at to jump up the category? And I will be sitting here listening very profusely because there's definitely at least one league that I am second to last in the category, but I'm second overall in the league. So this will be an area that I could definitely jump in. So who you got?
Oh, nice. It's a guy we've talked about throughout the season from time to time, as a lot of the speed guys are. But Bradley Zimmer continues to play every day for Cleveland. He's only 29% rostered TGFBI, single digits Yahoo, of course, 3 outfielders, a lot of those leagues, most of them. But 3 home runs and 3 stolen bases the past couple of weeks. When he was coming up, he was a power speed combo guy. The last couple of years in his sporadic playing time, it's been more of the speed that we could count on. And maybe he's finally been healthy long enough that we'll see a little bit of power with that as well. Not counting on that, but I do 6 games this week. I do like him for a stolen base or 2.
Nice. And I got a little sneak peek on Jenny, your choice. I love hearing this. We've talked about him a couple times, but tell me a little bit more about Nicky Lopez.
Yeah, so I think the best choice for speed here might be Nicky Lopez. He's been on a stolen base tear lately, including, you're telling me 2 more today. I just saw your note there and looked that up. That's great. So he's only 3% rostered in the online championship, so it looks like he's pretty widely available in 12-team leagues, and 46% in TGFBI, a good half of those too. He's recently started hitting a lot higher in the lineup. He was regularly hitting 9th, and now he's up to hitting 2nd, especially versus righties. In the last 2 weeks, his batting average has been 244, so it's not going to kill you. And he provides absolutely no power, so he's definitely a power drain.
Hey, he hit a home run the other day.
He did. That was his first. It was his first one, he hit one. Yeah, but he's got 6 runs and 7 stolen bases, and that was before today. So he's really been a great source of that in the last couple of weeks. He's also eligible at both second and short, which can be really valuable to have that roster flexibility, especially this late in the year, especially in leagues that are either daily or you can switch it out on Fridays. It's good to have as much roster flexibility as you can get.
Yeah, his tear on the bases lately has been what is the reason I picked him up like a month and a half ago, waiting for this recent tear, and I'm glad he's still in most of my lineups. Definitely needed that.
A couple of those stolen bases this week were third base, and I'm guessing Whit Merrifield got in his ear a little bit. Whit Merrifield likes to steal third base.
If you're going to steal, go all out. Come on.
Exactly. It gives him a chance for 2 when he gets on base. That's the best thing.
Absolutely.
Hey, if you're going to, there are worse voices to have in your ear than Whit Merrifield, especially when it comes to, stealing bases. So that's good to have. All right. Speaking of different opportunities, we're going to go into our opportunity category. Before I ask you guys for your recommendations, I want to go over a couple of notes for the schedule this coming week that everybody should just be keeping an eye on, taking notes on. There are only 5 teams that have at least 7-game slate this coming week, and that is Toronto, the White Sox, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, and Arizona. And there are only 5 teams that have a 5-game slate. So everybody else is 6 across the board, but the teams with only 5 games include Tampa Bay, Detroit, the Angels, Atlanta, and San Diego. With the Angels in San Diego, they have a weird schedule for the week. They have Monday off, and then they end their week off on Sunday. So they do have an off day on both halves of the NFBC lineup changes. So it's not the typical Monday, Thursday off days where you still get 3 days on the weekend. You're only going to get 2 unless they find a way to have a rain out, doubleheader, or makeup game or something like that. So keep an eye on your lineup changes to maximize those at-bats there. There are a couple teams that have a rare Wednesday off day, including Atlanta, Seattle, Oakland, and the Yankees. And Colorado is away all week with 3 games in Chicago against the Cubs and 3 games in LA against the Dodgers. Rocky Road will definitely be in play when you're looking at your pitchers that you're eyeing for next week. And obviously no extra bats in Denver. There are a couple NL teams going to the AL, so they're going to get their extra hitter in the lineup. San Diego has 2 against the Angels in LA. Milwaukee has 3 in Minnesota, and the Cubs have 3 in the White Sox. Those are all over the weekend, with 2 AL teams heading to the National League, so they're going to lose their DH. Tampa Bay has 2 in Philadelphia on Tuesday, Wednesday, and the Yankees have 2 in Atlanta to start their week on Monday, Tuesday. So going to have some missed opportunities for an extra batter in those situations. at least to start your week. So with all that in mind, Kevin, who do you have that had, whether it has to do with the schedule or just the matchups or what have you, who looks like they have a good opportunity ahead of themselves this coming week?
Yeah, it has a lot to do with the schedule for me. Kansas City is one of those teams with a 7-game week. Hunter Dozier has missed the last couple of days with an illness, but it does not appear to be COVID related. He's still with the team, so it can't be. I like him, especially if we see him in the game tomorrow. I like him this coming week. He had a horrible first half of the season. He was hitting, and I put it in my article, why is a guy that's hitting 154 100% rostered in main event teams, and he was still like 88% rostered on online championship teams, the 12-team leagues. He was hitting the ball hard and just horrible results. So the second half started and he began spraying the ball all over the field. He's hitting nearly 300, 288 the second half, but there wasn't any power along with it. Finally, this past week, it appears he's putting that together. 2 home runs this week, still spraying the ball around the field a little bit, 7-game week. I like Hunter Dozier going forward rest of the season, not just this week.
Yeah, I am one of those people that has continued to roster Hunter Dozier all year, and it's just, he has been so close to being dropped so many times this year, and every time I just hang on for one more week, and then I just hang on for one more week. And his positional eligibility is really nice. He's got outfield and both corner and field spots, and he's just not quite good enough to start and not quite bad enough to drop. But he fills in when he needs to, and I've had him in for the last week, so that's been nice. Hopefully he can continue this going forward.
All right, well, Jenny, who do you have? Who are you eyeing this weekend that has a good opportunity ahead of themselves?
So my pick is Connor Joe, and it's a little bit late for a great matchup situation. They were just at home all week this week, so we missed that, but I think that he might be a good play for the long run in terms of opportunity. He's been leading off for them every day since August 10th, which is quite a stretch now. And in that time, he's hitting 256 with a couple home runs, 5 RBIs. He's only got a 22% K rate and a 13% walk rate. It's pretty good. We missed the week at home, and they're going to be away all week next week, but the first half of the week is facing the Cubs, so that's might be a little bit easier. It's a good park to hit in. And then they'll be back home for 4 games out of 6 or 7, I think, the following week. So I think he might be a good person to look at for a little bit longer term. He's only 44% rostered in online championships and 63% in TGFBI, so he was not universally scooped up when he was facing this week at home. So if you can still get him, he might be a good one to look at.
All right, I like the look ahead. Of course, we'll get to our pitcher look ahead section a little bit later, but I do like the idea of this is the time of year where you don't have to necessarily only look at this coming week. You only have so many weeks ahead as well. So if you can skip 1 week to get a really good 3 or 4 week period ahead of that, this is definitely good to jump on that now rather than wait a week where everybody's going to realize what kind of matchups that they have and then the following week, especially when you're a hitter in Colorado. All right, speaking of that, I'm going to start off our pitcher category just asking you guys your opinion on a guy that I think fits that bill what we just talked about. Long term, when I say long term, obviously the season doesn't have that much length to it, but at least through the month of September, Patrick Corbin, who pitched really well, surprisingly, last night on Friday, and will probably be bid on quite a bit this weekend. He's still available in 16% of main events, 45% of online championships. But what I'm looking at is not necessarily only what he did yesterday, but also what he could possibly do throughout the month of September. He has a really positive outlook. The Nationals do in general, as far as their schedule goes. It's one of the easiest schedules throughout the month, even though obviously the Nationals are a little beat up as far as their roster, whether or not they make it difficult for any teams that they're playing. But they do face off they have matchups against Miami, against Pittsburgh, a couple other really good matchups. So, Kevin, I'll ask you first, is what Patrick Corbin has done to fantasy managers this year too much to overcome the possibility of looking ahead and seeing him do something good against bad matchups? Or is a buy low opportunity with crossing your fingers that he can do more of what we saw last night?
Well, as someone who, due to that nice short stretch he had in June where he started to give us glimpses of his old self, I held on to him way too long throughout July and August and finally just gave up on him. But this start at Miami this week looks really intriguing. So yeah, I'm back in for better or worse.
I'm going to try and stay away. I really believed in him going into this season. I was fine with drafting him at the price that he was going. And it just, Rob and I in the tag team league hung on to him for way too long also this year. And I just, it feels dangerous. And Washington may not be able to give him enough run support to get a win. So I'm going to try to stay away unless there's some leagues where you just need anybody you can get. And he's a good choice in that situation. But if I have the option, I would like to stay away.
He averaged 94 miles per hour is one of the hardest throwing days, and he has continuously been upping his strength of his fastball over the course of the last 2 or 3 months, going all the way. Obviously, he was hitting 91 earlier in the season. Last couple starts, obviously, like I said, he's 94, 93.4, 92.9, 93.5. So he is trending in the right direction. I'm just hoping it's not a little too late, because I did pick him up in a fast finger league yesterday after I saw what I saw. So here's hoping in that situation that he can take advantage of good matchups, like Kevin said, in Miami matchup next weekend. Next week alone is nice, not to mention what he has to look forward to throughout the month of September. But Jenny, if not Patrick Corbin, if Rob doesn't convince you to pick Patrick Corbin back up in your tag team league, who are you going to be pushing to look for extra wins in case next week?
In shallower leagues, I think a good choice might be Marco Gonzalez. He's 87% rostered in online championships, so this is definitely more of a 10 or 12 team league play. I'm sure he's more universally rostered in 15 teams. But he does have 2 starts this week. He's at Oakland and then against Kansas City, at home against Kansas City. He's really picked it up lately. He struggled for so long this season, and I rostered him several times and then dropped him just because I couldn't hold on any longer. But he's really turned it around, and he is somebody who you can always count on to pitch deep into the game. And Seattle is a good winning record. So I think that at this point in the season, Marco Gonzalez is a really good option. But then also in deeper leagues, Daniel Lynch has really looked good lately. He's 10% rostered in online championships and 10% also in TGFBI. So he's pretty widely available. His matchups this week are tough, at Houston and at Seattle. So getting a win might be a little bit tough, but he looks a lot better, and he's getting about a K per inning. Strikeouts might be good for him there. But I think both of these options are good for more than just a 1 week pickup. I think that if you pick them up and they do well, they might be somebody that you can hang on to down the stretch.
All right. And Kevin, who are you looking at to add those counting stats for the pitching categories?
Yeah, similarly, Tanner Houck, same rostership percentage in OCs at 87%. It was intriguing to me, though, that he's available in nearly over 75% of Yahoo leagues. I know that's a lot of daily changes, and it'll be picked up prior to Tuesday, but I would definitely be grabbing him where he's available. He gets at home versus Minnesota and then at Cleveland over the weekend. The risk here is he may not go really deep into the game. In fact, in recent starts, the only time that he did go 5 innings was the game that he gave up the 3 earned runs. But the strikeouts, 8 strikeouts in 4 2/3, 8 strikeouts in 5 innings. He's definitely worth having in your lineup for the strikeouts and the nice ERA. Hopefully one with having 2 starts. I just hope to get 1 win out of those 2 starts for the week.
Yeah, and as a Red Sox fan, I'll take 2. If
yeah, absolutely.
That's great. We talk a lot about, or we have recently just now talked a lot about future schedules. We're going to talk right now about looking ahead a week to our future 2-start pitchers that are not starting two times this week, but the following week, getting ahead of the game. But I want to give a shout out, make sure everybody is aware and they are utilizing it as a tool that to check out Justin Wick's SP Future Schedule article over at Pitcher List. He breaks down the best and worst upcoming schedules for starting pitchers as he predicts it 2 weeks in advance, every 2 weeks. So go check out pitcherlist.com and look for Justin Wick's SP Future Schedule article to give a good synopsis on who's got the best schedule, who's got the worst schedule, who to avoid, who to be targeting across the leagues. Take a look out for that. I know I use it regularly when I'm coming up with these names that I'm about to list off for you guys, because there's not a whole lot of them. And like I said, I usually list only pitchers that are currently scheduled to go to, and some of that has already changed with the Yankees game being postponed on Sunday already in preparation for heavy rains. Our best guess, and we'll stick with it as best we can. The other wrinkle that you see here, not only as we talk about all the time with pitchers being, or teams manipulating rotation schedules to take innings away or to hold pitchers back as they head into the playoffs, but also rosters are going to be expanding before this week will start. So it's not expanding as much as that had in the past. I think it's only 1 or 2 extra roster spots, but that will affect how many pitchers are on each roster and in rotations and whatnot. So keep an eye on that as well. There aren't that many here, so I'm going to go ahead and list them all off for everybody so they can be aware. And then I'm going to have you guys pick, of course, up one of them that you really like, one of them that you'll probably be fading, that you think more and more people will be interested in, but just not your cup of tea. We have Nick Pivetta, Chris Flexen, Josiah Gray, Luis Heel, Tyler Gilbert, no-hitter Tyler Gilbert, Jose Suarez, John Lester, Bailey Ober, Antonio Senzatella, and Spencer Howard. And like I said, they stay under 50% rostered across Yahoo. So Nick Pivetta, the most highly rostered at 49% across Yahoo, all the way down to Spencer Howard, who is only 2% rostered on Yahoo at the moment. Kevin, I'll start with you. Who do you like? Who are you fading?
I really liked Bailey Ober for this past week. He would have got his second start tomorrow. They did a bullpen day on Thursday, I believe, to push that back intentionally. Now he doesn't get a start till Tuesday at Boston. I don't like that. But the following 2-start week at Detroit, at Tampa Bay, I do. However, Detroit, as I've been talking about the past few weeks, isn't the Detroit we're used to. They've been scoring a lot of runs. And over the past 30 days, nobody's scored more runs than Tampa Bay. So I'm flip-flopping. And this is actually the one that I think people will look at, the at Detroit and at Tampa Bay matchups and like Bailey Ober. And that's the one I'm actually going to avoid that I typically would have liked. And I liked him, as I said, coming into this past week for 2 starts. I really like Josiah Gray. I think you brought him up earlier and last week. And in fact, for at Miami this week, and then getting to go home for 2 starts. Couple of lineups that can be hit or miss. They can be tough. Other times they seem to lay down for you in Philadelphia and the Mets. But getting them both at home, I like Josiah Gray for the 2 starts next week.
Yeah, supposedly Francisco Lindor and Javi Baez may or may not be back in the lineup as of the time you're listening to this podcast. So they'll definitely be back in the lineup by the time Gray faces them in 2 weeks. But something to keep an eye on. Jenny, who on this list do you like, and who are you fading?
Yeah, from the list that you gave us, I think I'm going to choose to go with Chris Flexen. He's been pretty good. I think a lot of us took a long time to get warmed up to him, but he's consistently stayed pretty good. So I think that he's a pretty safe bet. He's at Oakland this week, but then the next week he's versus Houston and at Arizona. If you have the opportunity to be in a league with daily moves, so you can sit him for the Houston start and start him for the Arizona start, that kind of defeats the purpose of talking about 2 starts 2 weeks from now. If you can pick and choose, that would be great. But I think if you're in a position where you really need to do something like this, then I think that you might just have to, close your eyes and take the Houston start and just hope that he really comes through in that Arizona start. I think off this list, I'm going to avoid Spencer Howard. I had some hope when he got traded that he might just all of a sudden click, but he still seems to be struggling, and I think maybe he just needs an off season to get himself. I still think he has promise in the long term, but I think he needs to put together a few good starts in a row before I can really buy in. I will just add that a little bit above your 50% rostership threshold is Eliezer Hernandez, who's 54% on Yahoo, but I really like him. He's looked good since he came back. I liked him before he got hurt, but he's versus Washington, but then in 2 weeks he's at the Mets, which could be tougher, like you just said, and then also versus Philly. So similar matchups to Josiah Gray, but Eliezer Hernandez is also available in quite a few weeks.
I think the most interesting, that's not the right word, for lack of a better word, I'll say interesting name I see on the list is Antonio Sensatella. And if nothing else, because his next 2 starts are on the road at the Cubs, and then he gets at Texas before coming back home against Atlanta. So again, to echo what Jenny said about daily moves, if you have that opportunity of picking him up for the next 2 starts, but not in a weekly move, that's nice. And maybe just avoid the home start against Atlanta. All right, so let's move on then to what's typically our reliever category. It can be starters as well. Our ratio category, guys, do you think that when you're not picking up to get to the counting stats, though, if they chip in a couple Ks or they walk into a win, great. But these are guys that you're trying to just save your ERA and your WHIP and any other ratios. So, Jenny, I'll start with you. Who are you looking at that can fill that role? And we talk about it every week. These are the categories that obviously other teams can blow up and they can start coming back down to other kind of counting category you can do that in. So these are definitely categories that we need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, I went with a couple of starters, and it's a little bit of a one or the other situation. When looking at trying to improve my ratios, relievers can be a great way to do it, but if I think I can do it with a starter, that's even better because you do get a larger volume of innings and potentially strikeouts. So if there are starters available, that's usually I try to go that way. I don't want to take too many chances, but if I think there's a good option out there, that's the way I'll try to go. So in this situation, both Nestor Cortes Jr. and Luis Gil have been getting some starts for the Yankees. It doesn't seem to be completely clear who is going to retain the job when both Cole and Montgomery, with them both being back now. If you have a feel about one or the other, they both are pretty widely available, and Nestor Cortes is a little bit more available in 13% of online championships and 34% TGFBI. And Luis Gil also, though, is 34% OC and 54% in TGFBI. So they're both pretty widely available, and they both have had really good ratios so far. If one of those 2 are available and they seem to be getting the start, then that would be my choice.
I think we expect he was supposed to start on Sunday. Obviously, that game was being postponed. I think the expectation is that he'll just get pushed back to Monday, Montgomery to Tuesday. But it would be interesting to see if they just don't make that roster move and he doesn't actually end up starting and they keep on that rotation. Officially, it's still listed as TBD. So definitely something to keep an eye on there. Kevin, who are you looking at to chip away at those ratios?
Yeah, I like a guy that might get a few more innings this week as well. It appears that Mitch White is penciled in for a start next Saturday. Now, a lot can happen between now and then. That would be for the Dodgers against Rockies on the road, the Dodgers being at home. Mitch White is really interesting. That this is going to be something you have to keep an eye on here because he hasn't pitched since Wednesday, when in a relief appearance, he went 7 1/3 against the Pirates and only gave up 2 hits and 2 walks in those 7 1/3 innings. Prior to that, he had started 2 games, but only going 4 innings and 3 2/3 in those 2 starts. That's his only 2 starts of the season. Everything else has been relief appearances. Many of them have been multi-inning relief appearances, beginning with on about July 7th, 4-inning appearance. So being penciled in as the starter versus the Rockies on the road is what has my attention. But if they need him over the next 2 or 3 days, not pitched since Wednesday, they'll probably go ahead and use him, and that could change everything. So you have to keep an eye on it.
All right, and we will move on to our most favorite section of the podcast, as it were, pretty much every week. Kevin, I'm going to start with you. Is there anything worth looking at in any bullpen situation across the league that's worth bidding on this weekend?
Not for me.
Okay.
It really is. We've talked about it quite a bit. I'm past the point of speculating. In a couple of my leagues, I'm at the point where I'm punting the category. In one league, now it really depends on the standings, but I'm 20-some saves behind. And I'm not going to make up 20-some saves in 6 weeks with guys that are available on the wire right now. So it's a tough decision to make, and it hurts to make it. But at some point, I can gain in strikeouts if I'm throwing guys getting innings out there and not worried about saves. In other spots, just really quickly, where I'm not going to gain a lot, but I'm in a tight race and can only gain one. But so I'm making sure and looking and throwing someone like, Scott Barlow for Kansas City isn't that popular because he doesn't get nearly every save opportunity that they have. Greg Holland being on the IL has helped that situation recently. He still doesn't get every opportunity, but where I believe I have 7 saves on the season and I can gain, another person has 8 and isn't playing a closer. So a couple of saves can get me that one standings point. But other than that, there's not a whole lot of situations that I really want to take action on right now. I'm the guys that are not getting every opportunity, or the speculative guys that I'm still hoping may get more opportunities going forward. As we talked about earlier in the season, I'm holding those guys. It doesn't do me any good to keep switching those guys, and then the guy I just got rid of be the guy that gets the save in a week. So I'm standing pat.
Yeah, I have one league that I've been doing really well in saves all season. I've got a comfortable lead in the category, and so I've been benching some solid closers. Luckily, I've been benching a guy like Alex Reyes, who's been getting blown up, but he has carried the category for me pretty much all season. But it's gotten to a point too where I've started dropping some of the lower guys, and that's something I just want to throw out there. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but this is where we're at a point in the season where you're going to see this happening more and more often with teams that are in the same situation as the one team I have, that they can make up more ground in wins and strikeouts and what have you. They're going to start considering dropping sometimes high-end relievers because they do themselves no good. If they're on the wire for a week, that's a week where they can't do anybody any good. But it's another example of why you should always be watching your drop list. When you check to see who you won every week on your FAAB bids, don't just look at who you won. Look at who everybody else is dropping and just automatically add them to at the very least, to your watch list. If not, what I do is I typically just put a bid on them for $1 on Sunday night after the bids are completed. So by the time next Sunday rolls around, they're already on my bid list. So I'm like, I don't have to go remembering or forgetting who I might have interest in. And if I don't have interest in them at that time, I just delete them. You're not going to win them for $1 anyway, so it's not a big deal. But Jenny, is there any situation out there that you're watching or have any interest in those situations where you can make up some extra ground in the saves category?
Yeah, there may be a situation opening up in Seattle. You mentioned that you put guys on a watch list. I actually keep a physical piece of paper that I carry around with me all week. That's one of the perks of having a purse. I just have a little piece of paper in my purse every week that I just jot names down as I'm listening to podcasts or reading articles. I just keep a running list. And one of the guys that I had on my list already earlier this week was Paul Sewald. And both Paul Sewald and Drew Steckenrider have both gotten save opportunities in Seattle. We thought that after the trade deadline that Diego Castillo was going to get a lot of the save chances, and he really hadn't been. And now Diego Castillo has gone on the IL. So it looks like there might be a job there. I'm going to guess, based on the way that they've been used over the last couple of weeks, that they are probably going to share the job. But there might be some saves there to get. And they both, especially Sewald, can get you some strikeouts too. They're pretty widely available. Sewald, 19% in OCs and 63% in TGFBI. And similar percentage for Drew Steckenrider, 18 in OC, but only 20% in TGFBI. So they are out there. And those might be a good option if you need some saves.
Yeah, Seattle bullpen has been, at one point you thought it was clear sailing. And then obviously trade deadline comes around and it's been questionable at best. So obviously everybody in that, not everybody, but the top end of that bullpen has been solid. It's just curious to know who's going to end up getting the S next to their name at the end of the game. All right, we move into what I think is probably my favorite category. The final category here is our wild card, our speculative ad section. Sometimes it's prospects. Sometimes they're just a bench stash, IL stash. It's the stashing section. So let's go, Jenny. I'm going to stick with you. Usually these are just players that we're either stashing or just didn't have a home in any of the other categories that we talked about. They don't fit. We don't want to pigeonhole them into any one particular category. So what player out there fits the bill for you in that area?
So I'm going to go with Ronaldo Lopez, who is a guy that I have been drafting for years, and it has never really worked out. And I keep going back and getting my feelings hurt. But I did this for several years with Giolito, and that finally, of course, I finally gave up on him in 2019 when he went crazy. But I have some faith in the White Sox coaching staff's ability to do a good job with these guys. And so he was started out in mid-July as a long reliever, but he's come into the rotation some when Carlos Rodon has been injured. He's really looked like a new guy. Since he got called up in July, he's 1.08 ERA and a 0.72 WHIP with more than a K per inning and a couple of wins. Who knows whether this is real or not? And Rodon is expected to be back. I don't know if he's started yet, but I think he's expected to be back this week. So he might lose that job, but it's somebody to definitely keep on your watch list and keep an eye on. Whether he might be useful as a long reliever. When he was long relieving, he was getting 2 and 3 innings at a time. That can be valuable in the right situation, or if you see him getting another start, especially if it's a good matchup. I think that he can be valuable there.
Yeah, with the White Sox being so far ahead in their division as well, they're currently 10.5 games up. They could easily go to at least 6-man rotation and save. Dylan Cease obviously hasn't pitched as much as he has this year ever, and so they could usually give their current starters a little bit of rest as they head into the playoffs. All right, and Kevin, we'll end it off with you. Who's your wild card? We do have one mailbag I want to get to, so we'll hold off on jumping into your parting words, but who is your wild card for the weekend?
Yeah, this is in deeper leagues. He doesn't play every day. He does play versus right-handed starters for the most part, but and then get a pinch hit appearance most days he doesn't start. But Isan Diaz in Miami has put a nice couple of weeks together, getting on base every game except one, multiple hits in 2 games over the past couple of weeks, a stolen base, a home run, and he's just somebody in deeper leagues that eligible at second base and third base that if I have a spot, I think I could do worse than Isan Diaz going forward, and just keeping an eye on him. This is somebody that had some pretty good hype coming up, 60 raw power on his prospect report from a couple of years ago, still 25 years old. Just somebody that over the past couple of weeks having a pretty good run here, and I'm keeping an extra close eye on.
All right, those are all really good shout outs for all these players that everybody should be keeping an eye out. Hopefully you all have a little piece of paper in your purse that you wrote them all down on, and you can bring it all out on Sunday night as you're putting in your final bid. So like I mentioned, we do have one mailbag question we got on Twitter. Guy Rob Di Petro. Yeah, you might have heard. I don't know. He wants to know, Kevin and Jenny, who is the best fantasy baseball partner you have ever had? And I have 2 leagues this year that I have a partner with. One of them, my partner does absolutely nothing, and he's just a big slacker. And I can't wait for this league to end.
Who's the other one?
And the other one is Adam Sloat, who is my co-partner in my 3-sport league in the League of Leagues. And now, of course, Kevin and I co-manage our podcast league. And we're actually doing okay. I think we're doing okay. I have to double check the standings. As a daily reminder that FAAB does run on Saturdays for multiple leagues. Jenny, that's your reminder as well in our Dynasty League that we have FAAB on Saturday nights, which is just the worst.
We need to change it.
But Kevin, do you have any other leagues that you have co-managed? I think we talked about this on a previous pod, but have you ever co-managed with anybody else besides myself? And I'm assuming I'm talking about I'm the one that's lazy and doesn't do anything because I continuously miss our FAAB bids
what's
on
funny
Saturday
is
nights.
We tend to both get very active with that team at the same time and both slack off at the same time. We got to get our timing down a little better. In baseball, I have partnered in fantasy football in the past. It actually worked out really well. He liked to draft. I like to do the in-season management, and that's how we split it up. But no, I have not had a partner in baseball before.
That's the way to go, though. It's like you find somebody who complements you. Like right. me and Adam Slow are perfect because I do a lot, or if not most of the baseball management. He does 100% of the football management. He'll text me or message me about something he wants to do. I'm like, just yes. Stop your question. Just do it. And then we go back and forth on the basketball side. But Jenny, I know that you have the tag team league that you hear so much about, especially at the beginning of the season. We saw it all over Twitter. How's that been going with Rob, the aforementioned Rob, who was on the show 2 months ago now? How's that going for you? And will you do it again?
Yeah, Rob is apparently fishing for compliments on Twitter, asking this question. But no, it's been actually great. I've never partnered before. I did at the end of last year for the playoff leagues that NFBC does. I did draft or pick a couple teams with Jeff Zimmerman, which was interesting. We had a 3-hour-long conversation picking our teams, but that's just a situation where you pick. It's not a draft. You just pick. And then it just goes best ball format forward. It's not even really best ball. There's no management to do once you've made your picks. So that's a little bit different. But this year, I asked Rob if he wanted to partner with me, and thankfully he said yes. I think one of the most valuable things that we did was we had a Zoom call, a pretty lengthy one, the day before the draft. It was the first timed quick draft that either one of us had done for the year. We had both been in a bunch of slow drafts, but your first time getting back to the 1-minute clock can feel real overwhelming real quick. So I'm really glad that we sat down and mapped out about the first 10 rounds of what we wanted to do with some different options of if we've done this earlier, then maybe we'll do this later. And thankfully, I didn't really know going in. I had listened to his pod and I had been a guest on his pod, but I didn't really know that we were going to be how our opinions on guys were going to be the same or different. But it really went well. We mostly agreed. And we have mostly tended to agree throughout the season with FAAB, which has been really nice. So it's been a happy accident that we agree so much. So I don't know what it would be like if I were constantly in disagreements and constantly having to negotiate for my own picks. But Rob has been great. And we just both do everything. We both take a look at the lineups. We both take a look at FAAB. Usually one of us will jump in before the other one and just put some guys in the FAAB list. And then the other person will go in and add here or there, maybe remove somebody, maybe suggest a different drop, and maybe resort a little bit. And then we'll say, all right, how much do you think? Maybe we're going to stay under 10 on this one. We're going to go a little bit heavier on this one. And we've had some of it just by text. There's been plenty of Sundays where we've jumped on a quick phone call, but it's just been really easy. And I think I would definitely do it again. There are I think 1 week for each of us this year where one of us just said to the other one, can you do it, FAAB, because I can't get to it. And it's been nice to have somebody there to back you up when you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed on Sundays.
Yeah, absolutely. That was going to be my follow-up question there is like how much you have to have a certain level of trust to be able to take your hands off the wheel and let somebody else drive, even for just 1 week, especially when it comes to FAAB. And not only who you're bidding on, but who you're dropping. And obviously you've got the guys that you're holding on to for probably longer than you should. And I'm sure Rob has the same. You mentioned Patrick Corbin earlier. And so, of course, just to clarify, Rob DiPietro at Dead Pull Hitter. You guys should be following him and listening to the Pull Hitter podcast, of course. If you're not already, you're missing out, and you have been for quite some time. All right, I think we talked about a lot of players. We had some really good strategy and insight. Jenny, thank you for all of that as well. But if there's a player that you're thinking of bidding on or you want us to discuss, you can let us know. You can email us at onthewirepod@gmail.com. You can shoot us a DM over on the Twitter at onthewirepod. Of course, you can also join the PL Plus over at pitcherlist.com, where you get access to the Pitcher List Discord and the advice and banter of all its members and Pitcher List staff who are just waiting to help you win your league. Jenny is in there as well, every once in a while, putting in her 2 cents, especially when it comes to our Dynasty League, which, again, FAAB runs tonight. So as soon as we log off of here, you know what we should be doing. I'm going to thank you once again, Jenny Butler, for joining us on this episode. Jenny, could you remind everybody how they can follow you and anything that they might be on the lookout for from you in the future?
Yeah, I'm mostly just on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at JennyButler830. I don't really write right now. I'm thinking I would like to try and get into it a little bit in the off season. So if there's any updates of anything that I'm doing in the off season, that's where I would let anybody know. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for making the time, and we will be in touch for the off season for sure. And that's going to do it for this week's On the Wire. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, and leaving a rating review is always appreciated. You can follow myself on the Twitter at 80grade, all spelled out, and Kevin is at HastingKevin. Make sure to follow at Pitcher List Pods to get updates about every new episode of all the Pitcher List Podcast Network shows, and give them all a listen. We wish you the best of luck in all of your leagues and hope you win all of your bids by exactly $1. Thanks again to Jenny Butler for joining us, and for Kevin Hastings, I am Adam Howe, and with that, we bid you goodbye.
At Amica Insurance, we know it's more than a life policy. It's about the promise and the responsibility that comes with being a new parent. Being there day and night, and building a plan for tomorrow, today. For the ones you'll always look out for, trust Amica Life Insurance. Amica. Empathy is our best policy.
Introducing the second best buffalo thing, Cheetos Crunchy Buffalo. Nothing beats buffalo wings on game day, but with a tangy and cheesy buffalo flavor, Cheetos Crunchy Buffalo is proud to be the second best buffalo thing. Grab Cheetos Crunchy Buffalo today.
The reviews are in for McDonald's hotter, juicier burgers. Let's hear what Hamburglar has to say.
Robble, robble.
What our old friend Hamburglar said is, the patties are juicier. The bun is a thing of beauty. The cheese perfectly melted.
Robble.
My burger dreams have come true. You heard him, folks. These are McDonald's best burgers ever. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Robble. Available at most restaurants in this area. Comparison of McDonald's classic burgers to prior burgers.
When it comes to teaching kids and teens about money, practice makes perfect. That's where Greenlight comes in. With a debit card and money app of their own, kids learn to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest. Parents send instant money transfers, create custom chores, and automate allowance, while kids track their spending, set savings goals, and practice money skills they can use today and for life. Get 1 month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/podcast.